All right, this is Melanie Menge, eXp Realty certified mentor, and I'm going to record a little class here today about buyer broker agreements because you guys often have those in the hopper quickly and need to move quickly on those. So those, of course, are happening before you actually have a house in mind. And when you are just working with a client, before you can show them a house, you have to have a buyer brokerage agreement in place. So we are going to create a transaction and we're going to call it Sally Buyer. And we don't really need a template at this point in time. It will be a residential sale. If we want a template for later, it would be purchase residential, but we're not going to use all the pieces yet. There's no import source because there's no property yet. So we're just going to create the Sally Buyer file. Now we don't have most of this information for Sally Buyer yet. So we're just going to save and exit the wizard. This is the transaction desk home screen. Yours might look a little bit different. Part of why it looks different is this lock and unlock dashboard. You can choose which things you want to include in your dashboard. Like now that I'm unlocked, I've never once used checklist. It's just not a piece I use. So I'm going to take that off. Authentisign is one of the main things I use. So I'm going to bring that up. If it was not on my dashboard, which Authentisign does not come off automatically. Oh, what did I just do? I am using my husband's Mac and I don't like it, just so you know. We're gonna put Authentisign back in here. See what happens here. I don't think this is the, no, that's not the one I want, unless I can drag it out. No, I want this one, the green Authentisign. Now it's a bigger block. I'm gonna stretch it out and make it fit my other ones. And I'm gonna choose to put it up top. So, and now that I have what I want here, I'm gonna just lock it. So this is my Sally Buyer transaction dashboard. And we are going to go to our forms list, but because it's all for a purchase there, we don't have all the forms we want. What we need is the Form 41 to get this whole thing started. So we are going to add a form. And I know that it's the Form 41. If you don't know that it's the Form 41, you can always go to my offer forms checklist. And right here, step one, before you show any houses, before you make any offers, you need the Form 41 and you need the P1 real estate brokerage pamphlet. It's right here on my checklist to remind you what you're doing. So that is down here at the bottom now. If you don't want it at the bottom, because you know we're going to work with it first, you can move it right up here to the top. Where did it go? There we go. It's almost to the top. All right, so these two are the ones we need. The 41 and the P1 are the ones we're using today. And when we click on it, anything we adjust on one form will be adjusted in all the forms. So it already filled out the buyer's name or the brokerage name because it knows the brokerage. But we're going to fill out Sally Buyer's name and then her, oh, I now made a mistake. So we're going to go back and fix it. And her husband's name is Jimmy Buyer. If that's not his official name, you definitely want to put James or whatever. What areas are you working with Sally and Jimmy in? Unlimited would mean even if they're buying in Florida, you have rights to them as a buyer. So you would be able to do a referral agreement and work with them wherever they want and control that. Otherwise, so maybe you want unlimited because you want control over them as a buyer everywhere in the country. Maybe you're like, I only drive to King County or Snohomish County, and I don't want to drive anywhere else. If they want something in Spokane, they can figure that out for themselves. Either option is totally legitimate. So if, um, maybe you're going to limit it and do King and Snohomish counties. Now, if they want something in Pierce County, if you fill it out like this, you do not have a buyer's agreement with these clients. They are free to sign a new BBSA with someone in Pierce County for Pierce County, but you own them as clients in King and Snohomish counties. The agreement will expire in how many days? 60 days is very short. Usually it's, often going to take more than 2 months for somebody to find a house. So I would do at least a few months, like 180, 365. It's up to you. You can decide how long it is. Once you do have this agreement signed, put a reminder in your phone or in your KV Core or wherever it is that you work with your buyers or work with your tasks on so that you get a reminder before this expires. Because at 181 days, you no longer have a buyer's agreement. So you want to make sure you know to re-up that before it expires. Now, this could also be for one property and it could be for 7 days. Maybe you just met this person off the internet and you're not sure you like them. You may think they're kind of creepy. So you want to put one house address on there and just a few days, and that's good enough for now. It's basically a dating agreement. You're going to check each other out, see if you actually want to work together. Then if that goes well, you sign a new agreement for unlimited, a longer period of time, a larger area, but your first agreement can be just one property, one set of days. That maybe they're an investor. Investors are very hesitant to sign buyer brokerage agreements traditionally, but now they don't have a choice. But they're probably not going to sign an unlimited agreement with you. They like to work with whoever brings them a deal. So if you bring them a deal, they'll sign an agreement for that one deal. If it works out, that house you take them to, they will buy it through you. But if somebody else brings them a deal or somebody else also brings them a deal, they'll sign both and they'll do deals with 2 different brokers. You get to choose whether this is an exclusive or non-exclusive agreement. In general, I would recommend this be an exclusive agreement. Make the property areas and the term days be small enough that, for that one house, for that 1 week, this is an exclusive relationship. Don't let them go buy that one house through somebody else. Non-exclusive would mean, they can talk with everybody else at the same time. My general instruction, like for eXp Realty, you may be a limited dual agent. It is an option. My advice as a newer agent for you would be to not be a limited dual agent. A limited dual agent needs to appropriately represent both sides of the party at the same time. And if you have infrequently represented one side of the property of the deal, you probably don't know how to do both at the same time. And if you do it wrong, you are liable to get sued. So I would encourage you not to do dual representation. One side can go unrepresented if it's a for sale by owner and they don't want an agent. That's fine. Then you're the buyer's agent and you only have to represent the buyer. Or if they do want representation, then find somebody you like and refer it to them. Refer it to me. I can be the buyer. If you have a buyer come into your listing and they don't have an agent and they want one, refer it to me and I will give you a referral fee and you aren't in charge of representing both sides of the deal. So take the referral fee and not the extra responsibility, and you'll still get paid extra and it will work better. It'll be safer for you for your first transactions. Compensation. This is that hard conversation that we need to have right away. And at this point in time, this is the most you will get paid, the way that the rules have changed. So if you put 1.5% in here and the sellers are offering 3%, you only get paid 1.5%. So this is time for you to think about, what is your worth? How hard are you negotiating for yourself to be paid? You can change a buyer's broker agreement later. So if you put 3% on here and after negotiations, they're still at 1.5%, and you know they can't pay that 1.5%, you can adjust down your compensation. You should not be adjusting up your compensation. That would be totally against what the purpose of the law was and could get you in trouble. If you have 2.5% on this agreement and the sellers are only willing to pay 2%, the idea here would be that the buyers will come up with that other 0.5% and pay that to you in closing. That would be how this is set up. So make sure you read all these contracts, but buyer acknowledges there are no standard compensation rates, and the compensation in this agreement is fully negotiable and not set by law. EXP is not telling you what your buyer compensation rate is. You may have a standard rate. You can tell people, I only work for 5%. That's totally fine. But you make sure that is clear that that is your rate. It's not a standard rate for the industry, and it's not set by our company. The firm may not receive any compensation for brokerage services provided to buyer from any source greater than the amount set forth in this section 5 or any subsequent amendment hereto. So if you have 2.5 here and they offer 3, you get 2.5. That extra half can go towards your buyer for closing costs, or it could go back to the seller, or could be negotiated in other ways, but that's the main ways. The compensation for buyer brokerage firm services shall be, I'm going to say for this one, 2.5%. You may say, I work for 10 grand. You could put a dollar amount in there instead, that 10 grand is what I work for. And that's an option. B is not going to be applicable because you do not, I'm telling you not to do both sides right now, limited dual agent. Now, if the seller is not represented by a real estate firm, then the compensation amount in 5A, then the compensation shall be. So if you are helping a for sale by owner and the buyer, what will you get paid? I would recommend in general for you to try to do a little bit higher in that circumstance. Again, I'm not sure the for sale by owner will bite. They may not be willing to help pay 4%, but if they can pay 2.5 and the buyer can pay the other part, it may work out just fine. I can tell you, you will for sure be doing more work if the seller is not represented. So that's the way I fill out my forms. You can decide, it's all negotiable. You should read all of these terms. Compensation after expiration. I usually use 60 on this standard. I don't like blanks. So even though it says 60 days if not filled in, I put 60 in there. I take their recommendation, but I don't like blanks. Inspection recommended, and then you can put other notes here. So you could put a note in here saying, it is hope we're going to make every effort possible to have the seller pay the buyer broker commission. But that's kind of a given. But if that's the only way your buyers are comfortable enough to sign it, then you could try that. Whatever extra things you have. You want to put your buyer's information in here, right? So Sally@gmail.com. Their number is 206-867-5309. That's their phone number. And then we've got signature lines. All right, the buyer brokerage services. Oops, that's the one we just did. It's been a long day here, let me tell you. All right, the P1, is what I'm trying to talk about, is the pamphlet that you should give to your clients along with the Form 41. This explains real estate brokerage and agency relationships in Washington State. You are required to give this to your client and to be able to show that you did. There are people who still print it. Please don't do it that way. I will show you how I do it. I send mine in the signing with my Form 41. So we're going to start a new signing and we're going to call it Sally Buyer Form 41. It doesn't matter what you call this, but they will see it. So don't call it Sally stinks and I'm really annoyed by her, because she will see it and you don't want that to happen. So name it something professional where you know which signing it is. So we're going to add a document or form. This is the ones from your transaction. So we are going to just add the Form 41 and we're going to add the P1. You can also upload forms. You can go through your own documents, but these are all the transaction forms. Now that we have the forms in here, we need the signers. We're going to add participants. Start from this transaction. We've got Sally and Jimmy. We've got me as the buyer broker, and we're all going to be remote signers. We need to add somebody though. We're going to add new. You are all going to add in me. And I'm going to give you my Gmail for this one. Melanie, your RE broker at Gmail. And you can use my EXP email or my Gmail. It doesn't matter. I just already have an email in here. And my role is other. And you are going to want to save me to your contact list because you're going to need me for all of your first deals. I am not a remote signer. What I am is a reviewer, and I should be reviewing all of your first contracts. So what happened to the other ones? Okay, let's check the boxes here. Select all of them. All right, it is going to map out for us already. Sally, Jimmy, and me as the broker. We've got a little red exclamation point for Jimmy because we don't have his email yet. So we need to add an email in for Jimmy. He can have the same email as Sally, and they would just get two different emails. Or they can have different emails. And I want to update his transaction contact. So everywhere that he is a part of it, he will show up. And that email will be part of his file. So now we have multiple people here. The next thing we're going to do, it's set up this way right now, but we're going to set signing order so that Melanie Menge, the reviewer, is first. That way I receive it to look at before your clients receive it. And if I don't approve it, it doesn't go forward. So now we're going to go through and look at the contract. We've got both names, we've got the county, we've got exclusive relationship. There we have initials from both of our people. When you click on this initial block that was put here automatically, here it says required and it says date stamp, and that came up automatically. If your date stamp doesn't come up automatically, make these selections and click save as default settings. So every time I add an initial onto a document, it automatically makes it required and it automatically adds a date stamp. So that is the setting that is going to make your life the easiest. On this signing tools, you can drop down and pick who you want and look at their different signatures. If I need to add Jimmy's name, I can just drag it over. But I don't need Jimmy's name, so I'm going to delete it. You can do check boxes, initial choice, sign here, initials. There's all the different choices, or bring over their email address, date, time, whatever you need. So here we want to double check. We've got the buyer broker signature, which is me. We have buyer 1 and buyer 2. They're all signed and dated. Now this form is going to come up. There's no signing lines on the P1. Technically, obviously, I can tell they received it because it's being sent in transaction desk. I can get away with this and not do anything else. I'm anal. I like double checks. So I always add just an initial from the clients onto the P1 just so that they've acknowledged with a click that they've received it. The date comes up right with it because I've set that as my default. So now it's just one more click for them to acknowledge that they've received this real estate brokerage email or document. So once I have this all set up, I'm going to hit next. And it's, you can customize your emails. So you can just leave it to be default, or else, you know, maybe for mine, you're going to want to say, hey, Melanie, please check out my first BBSA. Is it right? You know, or maybe, you know, whatever you want to say. This is the contract that we talked about when we met for coffee. Please just initial and I'll get it back from you. Or else you can not write anything specific and it will send an automatic email. I'm not going to hit send because Jimmy Buyer Gmail does not exist and I don't want to actually send this. But when you send it, first it's going to go to me. Send me a text message because I don't just sit and watch my email all day long. So if you send me a text message and say, I just sent you a contract, please take a look at it, then I can usually get to it within the hour, if not sooner, and can take a look at it and approve it and get it onto your buyers or your sellers or whoever is trying to sign this piece of paper. If you just email it to me, it might sit for a few hours until I get around to going into my email again. So texting me is important so that I can look at it for you sooner than later. But this is how, then once this is signed by everybody, your clients will automatically get a final copy through transaction desk. I will also get a final copy through transaction desk because I'm on the list there, as will you. And you need to download that final copy and upload it into SkySlope as a non-contract. Should have opened SkySlope first. As a non-contract buyer agreement. Let's look at how to do that. Yes. Let me in. All right, so this is the Sky Slope homepage. You're going to create a new transaction. I am the purchase person, and this is pre-contract because we don't have a house yet, but within 48 hours, it's state law, within 2 business days, there needs to be, the company needs copies of valid contracts. There is not an existing form on file, so I hit click pre-contract and I'm just going to go forward. This is for Washington. It will eventually be a Washington residential sale, so that's the checklist that I want. Continue. There's no company. We're going to have Sally buyer. And she needs a phone number. Oh, and that didn't come through. And then we're going to add Jimmy buyer. And that's my phone number. All right, so there's our 2 buyers. Continue. And then you've got this checklist. And these are all the things that will be required, if they say required or if applicable, when you're actually closing a deal. But all we're doing right now is this first part, this Form 41. You will go to Documents, and you're going to upload a document. You're going to pick, I don't even know what documents I'm looking at here. That's a birthday post. That's not going to help us at all, but we're going to put it in there, and they're going to actually be mad at me because you're not supposed to do this, and don't really play and start these sorts of things in Sky Slope because they don't like it. So you would assign it. Oh, there we go. It's just way down at the bottom. So you would assign it. And then when you go to your checklist, see it's in review. And I've got to fix this because they're not going to be happy with me when I have this fake thing that they come in and look at later. So that's what you do. You just assign the different things. Now, when I accept a contract, I just hit accept contract, and I'm going to upload the purchase and sale agreement, and I'm going to start assigning all the different pieces of the contract. And we'll then have a closing date and a sale price and all the other things that are asked for at the top of this form. We are going to remove that. Go into documents and move that to trash. So now on the transaction details, I've got, the clients' names who are fake clients, but no actual paperwork affiliated with that buyer right now because they're fake. But you need to do that. You need to open that within 2 days of having your contract signed. That way, if something happens, you have on record that you have a contract. I just had somebody this week who a different agent basically tried to steal her buyer, and because she had a buyer's agreement, that did not work well for the stealing agent. So the paperwork matters. It's important, and it's the law. All right, I don't have anyone here to ask me questions, so I'm going to just assume that this stuff mostly makes sense. Otherwise, I can do a follow-up video, or we can do it in a Tuesday call. As always, send me a text message, but I expect to see a few BBSAs coming from some of you probably at the end of the Thanksgiving weekend here, because you're going to talk to Uncle Joe and find out he needs a house. So make sure you get a contract signed, and I will talk to you soon. You guys have a great Thanksgiving, and I will see you next week.